Let's move on to another company that has a bad history of the way they treat their workers, and that's Papa John's Pizza. A franchise with Papa John's recently got into some serious trouble, and it looks like there's a chance that the owner might actually, the franchise owner might actually face some serious actual jail time because of it. Tell us about it.
Yes, this happened in New York. So Attorney General Eric Schneiderman has been sort of going after the fast food industry in New York generally, but I think really aggressively against Papa John's. Brought the first criminal case over wage theft against a fast food place in New York. And it's the owner of the franchise has turned himself in, is likely to face some jail time, which is pretty unusual, even though, wage theft as a term sort of implies, stealing, right? You're stealing wages from your employees through various different means. But it doesn't usually tend to, first of all, a lot of it goes under the radar. I mean, even when employees report it, they often don't get any back pay. Many employees obviously are not reporting it because they fear risking their jobs or they fear that they won't get anything out of it. And so such a severe consequence for someone who is stealing wages is very, very unusual. Although Schneiderman said when he announced the charges that this is not where he's going to stop. He's going to keep using criminal charges against employers in New York who commit wage theft. I think part of what's interesting about this particular case, too, is that the wage theft was so egregious and almost a little bit comical. So what they did was they paid the same base wage to their employees no matter how many hours they worked, which if you're subject to overtime rules, which these employees were because they made so little, if you work more than 40 hours a week, you're supposed to get time and a half for those extra hours. So they were just being paid regular pay. And the way this franchisee got around it was that they paid in cash, but they also made up fake names for these employees for when they were working overtime. So I'd punch in the clock as Bryce Covert, work my 40 hours, and then when the 40-hour sort of limit hit, I would punch in as, like Sally Jane or whatever. And those
Bruce Covert.
Yeah, right, Bruce Covert. And then they filed tax returns based on all of these weird shenanigans. So it was a particularly creative, I guess, way of stealing wages, and a very much, I think it's clear from those details that were corroborated by the records that the company kept that they knew what they were doing. But they knew what they were doing was not in accordance with the law. But yeah, Schneiderman has gone after Papa John's before, in October of last year, in February of last year, over other kinds of wage theft cases, and he's gone after lots of other fast food employers in the city. This is definitely a big focus for him.
Yeah, and that's a very positive thing, because obviously fast food workers don't have have very little protections. Very few of them are in any type of union at all. Obviously, we have the Fight for 15 and all the fast food workers strikes that have been going on. And the fact that you actually do have someone actually going after these companies and these managers and franchise owners that are robbing their employees is definitely a positive sign.
Yeah, and it takes that kind of enforcement usually. I mean, when you're relying on workers to bring these cases themselves, like I said, it's a really risky thing for an individual employee or even a group of employees to do on their own. It's costly. You have to pay legal fees unless they get paid back to you in the end if you win your case. You can put your job at risk. You can end up seeing nothing out of it if the court finds against you. So if you're going to try and change practices in a given industry, it's much more effective if someone on the regulatory side comes in and tries to police the industry and investigates themselves and uncovers this wrongdoing, from that standpoint.
Do we know how specifically this franchise owner kind of came to light? Was it through whistleblowers, through the employees? How did this actually? Do we have any details on how this whole thing actually came to light? And theoretically, how, say, another employee at another fast food restaurant sees this, like what kind of steps were taken to actually get to this point? I mean, obviously this is a really extreme example, right? I mean, it's above and beyond. It's to the point of ridiculousness how much this guy was stealing. But like, do we know how this actually came about?
I believe it was just Schneiderman investigating. I think he has these ongoing investigations into lots of fast food companies and lots of fast food franchisees. And this was one where they uncovered these records and found out what he was doing. I don't believe it came from the employees themselves, although it's very possible that, they interviewed them or talked to them as part of it. But yeah, I think this was all Schneiderman, basically. This is one of his, really big initiatives. Some of the other things he's brought to have been similar, where he's just gone in and done the investigation. And it's ongoing. Like I said, he said this is not the end. We're going to bring more charges like this. We're going to be investigating more companies like this. So I think, as long as he's in the Attorney General seat, we can expect to see more stuff like this.